It's a sitting week in Canberra, so let's bring in our political panel, National Senate Leader Bridget McKenzie and Labor MP Andrew Charlton. Great to see you both. Hope you're in fine form tonight because it was certainly a fiery question time today. Tax cuts, of course, the main focus. Also, the broken promise, with Peter Dutton claiming the Prime Minister is the liar from the lodge. Andrew, this is a brutally effective slogan, isn't it?
Well, Sharri, the most important issue facing Australian families is the cost of living. Families are worried about being able to pay the rent, being able to afford groceries. So the Prime Minister took a decision when he saw a better way to deliver more tax relief to more people. But if we want to talk about honesty and words and trust, your viewers need to know that just today, Peter Dutton has been saying out of one side of his mouth that these are terrible changes to the tax system, and out of the other side of his mouth, he's been saying that he will vote for them. That is the real duplicity in Australian politics today.
Bridget, this is the main line of attack that we've heard from Albanese today, that, you know, the coalition has changed its mind on the tax policy and is criticising it, yet also supporting it. What's your response to this?
You know, I think your viewers just saw the Prime Minister joking in question time about breaching faith with the Australian people. He promised 97 times that he was committed to the stage 3 tax cuts. He's done the backflip. And I think the public knows that whilst, of course, they need to be keeping more of their own hard-earned money, and we're always going to be the side of politics that backs lower, simpler and fairer tax system, 100% of Australians hate being lied to. And I think that's the great tragedy that Labor refuses to accept. They seem to think that they can get away with giving Australians more of their money back without significant tax reform to the bracket creep that's hurting Australians. And Andrew makes a great point. Australians are hurting. They're making decisions not to send kids to swimming lessons, ballet lessons, etc., whilst they struggle to pay mortgages. And that's because these tax cuts do nothing to actually address inflation. Labor's added $209 billion additional spending to their bottom line since coming to power, and that's exactly the wrong way to approach monetary policy. So I think Australians are going to welcome that relief, but will they trust this guy again? No way.
Yeah.
Sharri,
Look,
if I could just jump in here, because
go ahead.
Bridget has just criticised these tax changes, but the question she has to answer for your viewers is, at the end of the day, will she be voting for Labor's changes or will she not? And if she is voting for them, which she is, then everything she has just said is just politics.
Bridget, very quickly.
Andrew, sorry, Sharri, and I hate to do this, but Andrew, wants to play politics. I'll tell you what, they handed down a May budget. They handed down an October 22 budget. None of those budgets mentioned changes to the stage 3 tax cuts. They went to my EFO prior to Christmas. They could have actually announced this change then around their changes to monetary policy. They didn't. You know why? Because the only thing that's changed is a by-election in Dunkley, and this is actually the Prime Minister and the government have trashed their reputation to win a by-election in southeast suburbs of Melbourne.
All right.
Bridget,
look, there's no doubt it's a broken promise
for these tax changes.
Let's move on to another controversial topic.
The question.
Tony Burke and the Prime Minister are pushing ahead with controversial legislation that's dubbed Right to Disconnect. This is quite fascinating legislation. It's an area that government doesn't usually intervene in. This is basically meaning that bosses can't contact workers after hours, and workers can actually contact the Fair Work Commission to get orders, formal orders, to stop their bosses from contacting them outside of official hours. You know, you wouldn't usually be seeing government setting legislation in an area like this. There has been a compromise, which is that employers can't be fined for breaches of the law. Andrew, look, you founded your own successful company. You'd be well aware of the pressures to respond to calls and emails outside of work. Do you think government should be intervening in business and how it operates like this?
think it's about finding a reasonable balance. I mean, most people, I think, would agree that many of these new technologies like smartphones and other things have enabled us to have lots of great flexibility, which many of us enjoy and appreciate. But we have to make sure that these technologies don't mean that workers can't clock off at the end of the day and have some time to themselves and their family. So it's really just about finding a balance in response to a significant change in our workplaces. And that change is the ability of people to be contacted at any time. And we're finding the right balance to make sure that that change is a positive thing for people, for businesses and for workers.
What do you think about this, Bridget? I mean, is this intervening to too great an extent? Is this big government, or is this something that the coalition will be supporting?
Well, I think this is, the price of a dirty deal done to get the most significant change done in our industrial relations law through the Senate. Right now, Sharri, we are debating this IR change in the Senate. The government finally got the dirty deal with the Greens and Pocock this afternoon, so walked into the chamber, slammed on a motion to actually restrict debate tonight and restrict our ability to question the intricacies of this legislation because they've got the deal. And this is the price. Andrew's right, you do need a sensible balance, but that's something to be negotiated between employers and employees depending on the workplace. I'm very concerned about this legislation, and what I have seen from this Labor government is trashing the role of the Senate in terms of being the place where we look at the detail, we actually prosecute the intricacies. This change wasn't in the consultation papers with broader business. It's not even in the legislation that's before the Parliament right now. So it was not being contemplated by the government. It is something they've had to do to get a deal. And that means we're not going to actually be able to investigate this appropriately through a Senate inquiry, through the chamber, asking ministers sensible questions, because Labor doesn't care. They just need to pay their masters, the union movement, get the IR ledge through as soon as possible, and it's trashing democracy along the way.
And Tony Burke has been exposed through this process as being quite close to the unions. Now, the RBA, as you know, yesterday kept the cash rate on hold at 4.35%. But Governor Michelle Bullock warns that inflation is still too high. Rent, of course, is one area. Andrew, do you think, and the RBA couldn't give a firm prediction on this, but do you expect that rates might start falling this year?
Well, look, it's certainly welcome news for many Australians that rates were left on hold at the most recent meeting and were not put up. And, one of the reasons for that is that we do have inflation coming down quite significantly. Let's remember the government has reduced the quarterly rate of inflation from 1.8% when Bridget's party gave up government, now down to 0.6%. So quarterly inflation has come down by 2/3. And that, of course, gives the RBA a lot more room to bring interest rates down over time, should circumstances permit that. And more broadly, people are benefiting from a fantastic set of economic circumstances across the macroeconomy. Unemployment is near record lows. The ASX is near record highs. Wages growth is at the fastest rate in 15 years, and we have the first budget surplus in 15 years. So this set of strong macroeconomic conditions shows that the government's plan has been working, and it will ultimately flow through to better standards of living for all Australians.
Bridget, do you give the government credit for the fact inflation is now falling?
Sharri, Andrew does a valiant attempt as an economist to actually, wash through what this government's actually done over the last 18 months. The Reserve Bank Governor, the independent Reserve Bank Governor, has said that inflation is now homegrown in this country. She's taking a very cautious response, as she should. And this week we saw the OECD come out and caution globally nations to actually be very cautious about lifting interest rates. So the government talks a big game, but right now, tonight, around kitchen tables in the country, they're struggling to pay their mortgage because The RBA has had to do the heavy lifting for the last 18 months on getting inflation under control because this government's done nothing to lift productivity. It's made it worse, particularly through these industrial relations policies, and also by increasing government spending, which are the two things that governments shouldn't be doing if you're wanting to actually get inflation under control.
All right.
We have the first surplus in 15 years. We have the surplus that the Liberals couldn't deliver has been delivered, and that reflects
thank you to the resources sector.
Fiscal management, which is helping to take pressure off interest rates.
You need to stop hitting them over the head. They're providing you your surplus.
All right. Bridget McKenzie, Andrew Charlton, thank you both so much.